Get this show on the road. So like we always start, we play the shush game. Shh. That's all. We're going to do it together. I need your help. Shh. Shh. We're going to be an ocean of shushes. Shh. Can I get a seagull? Is there a seagull? Shh. Shh. Welcome to VR Cinema number 2. Thank you so much for making it out on a Saturday. Sorry for the last-minute change of time from Thursday. If you can believe it, PG&E they were doing like power testing or something, and the power was going to be completely off on the building, so we didn't have a choice on that one. I am thrilled that we have 9 VR filmmaking pioneers that are presenting movies today. A little rundown of how the event's going to go. We're going to be up here talking for, I promise, no longer than an hour. Then we are going to open up the room in the back, where we have set up a bunch of stations to view 3 of the first ever animated films for virtual reality. I'm really, really excited to present them to you. I think they are the first step in something that could be really, really awesome. So I want to talk about the no talking policy during the speakers. These people have come from across the country to talk to you, so if you've got a conversation that's super pressing or a phone call or something, please take it outside. If someone comes late and they didn't get the no talking policy notice, please politely ask them to shut the fuck up. If they don't, come to me and we'll ask them to leave. After that sort of downer note, I want to thank some people. I want to thank Jaunt VR for sponsoring the event, so let's give them a big round of applause. Especially Nicole at Jaunt, who really helped make that happen. I'd like to thank Mozilla for having us in this amazing venue, especially Josh Carpenter and Diego for coming in on a Saturday, and Sop for running AV. Thank you, Sop. But most importantly, I want to thank my beautiful wife, who you all saw running the door. Selena is the co-founder and co-organizer of the event. None of this would happen with... It has to be a much bigger round of applause for her, much bigger. Thank you, Selena. So with that, I'd like to get things started. I'm going to have Nancy and Lou come up. They're 2 incredibly talented 3D artists from Pixar, and they've spent the last year experimenting with real-time engines for narrative filmmaking. So come on up, Nancy and Lou. So the podium mic works, or you can use one of these. Probably you can use I think.
Hi, I'm Nancy, and
yeah, let's get
oh,
Jess.
okay.
You can take this one. Doing a little mic switcheroo.
Hi, I'm Nancy. This is Lou. Can everybody hear me in the back? And
Maybe talk in a little. You gotta hold these
okay.
like right in your face.
Okay, this is weird. All right, so we're both technical directors at Pixar, as Renee said, and we like to share our experiences with using game techniques for real-time filmmaking. So outside of Pixar, we have many ideas for side projects that we want to do, but we don't have a lot of time to explore each one exhaustively. So to vet them cheaply, we're interested in making small vignettes to get a sense of the world and the story for each one. With our backgrounds, we're used to everything being rendered offline, which basically means that each frame may take hours or days to render. In contrast, as you know, games have to render.
Remember to get that mic up to your face.
Oh, sorry.
Right up there, like you're eating an ice cream cone.
In contrast, as you know, games have to be rendered at interactive frame rates. Also, the visual quality of games has been approaching that of CG films. We feel that with all these advances, game engines are a very enticing tool for creating animated films. So we anticipated 2 major benefits from this workflow over traditional offline methods. The first being working in context. And basically what that means is we wanted to be able to see every single frame with all of our final shading and lighting in order to make better creative decisions. And secondly, because our scene is being rendered at interactive rates, we could try different ideas, more adventurous ideas that we normally wouldn't have tried in the normal CG production because of how long the turnaround time would be. So to explore what this would mean for us, we decided to do a one-shot test in a game engine. And our goal from the start was to basically try to achieve an offline rendering look. Each commercially available game engine has its own visual flavor out of the box. So we knew that in order to make our film or vignette look unique, we would need to write a lot of our own shaders and our own tools. So after some consideration of which game engines were available, we chose Unity for its ease of extensibility, and it also helped that it was free. So here's the fruit of our labor, working in our off time for about 3 months, and this includes all of the asset building, the animation, and any of the pipeline that we had to develop. So I'll just play that again because it's really short. Thank you. Now I'll hand it off to Lou, who will talk about our process.
Okay. So just to quickly take you through some of the highlights of the process, the front end of our pipeline was fairly traditional. We did all of our modeling and set dressing in Maya and imported that into Unity. And because we were dealing with one scene and a fixed camera, we could cheat the way things were modeled and dressed, really only working on the stuff that you would see in the final frame. This is, of course, very contrary to what a lot of you are probably doing with your VR projects. For animation and camera, however, we did something a little bit different. In order to get the performance and the deformation that we wanted, we decided not to import joint-based rigs, but instead to cache out our animation. And to do that, we had to develop a pipeline for Unity to play it back. However, all the plants, dust motes, and grass that you see in the shot were all animated procedurally. So efficiency-wise, for our workflow, these parts of the pipeline don't really change too much. The methods and tools we use are the same that we would use in a CG film pipeline. However, every shader you see in the vignette was custom. For example, they all had the option to individually tweak their shadow colors. Something very non-physically based, but crucial for us in really finding the final look. We also wrote some very specialized shaders. The moss, for example, uses ray marching to give depth and dimension and could be groomed as desired. In lighting the scene, we knew we wanted to feel immersed in light dappled through tree canopies. Rather than trying to force cast shadows to give us that effect, we projected a procedural lighting pattern on the log and tied it to the scene with faked but effective volumetrics. In addition, we implemented a screen space global illumination effect. This helped tie all the elements together and give greater spatial context. Tweaking all these things in real time was a huge win and very different for us from what we're used to doing. And to really push that cinematic feel, we needed certain things that could only happen in a camera. So depth of field and grain helped a lot, but we also needed some anti-aliasing, bloom, and vignetting. At this point, we activated our 30-day Unity Pro trial, which we really used up until the very, I think, it expired on midnight the day that we, yeah, anyway, up to the very last second of putting in those last finishing touches. So, granted, this was just a test case for us, just to feel out what it would look like to make something and try to push the quality in a game engine for more narrative stuff. But this particular vignette was never meant to be interactive. We found, however, that working in an interactive environment was extremely liberating for us. Without all the post effects turned on, we could make tweaks at anything in the scene, still running at about 60 or 70 FPS. With all the post effects, however, of course, this started to tank, and our images rendered at a rate of about 5 frames per second. This is on our laptops, of course. So that's that thing, sorry. Game engines allow us to create convincing solutions cheaply and flexibly as opposed to the rigid pipelines we're usually finding on CG films. And strangely enough, we found that the front end of the pipeline, all the asset creation, became more of a bottleneck than we're usually accustomed to. So, we're going through this as quickly as we can. There's a lot more information on all the stuff that we've talked about on our blog if you guys are interested. It's at dabbleduo.blogspot.com, and we'd be happy to take any questions that you guys have.
Big round of applause. Thank you, guys. So beautiful. I mean, that looks like a Pixar short, but it's done in real time, which is crazy. It's mind-blowing. First question.
I got one. You said at the end that the bottleneck was at the front end. Could you talk more about that?
Sure. For us, usually on our more full-blown CG productions, stuff tends to slow down towards the end. A lot of stuff, as it gets into lighting and rendering, gets backed up pretty heavily,
Sure.
and that's where we end up paying the cost. For us, because we could iterate on the look so rapidly, that was never an issue. We were always lighting and shading from the first second we had the asset in the scene. So really, for us, the bottleneck in getting the thing through was approving our modeling, approving all of our shaping and stuff at the onset as quickly as we could so that we could get onto the other things. Yeah, and of course, rigging, yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Sure.
Next question.
Sure.
So how do you see this affect how you make your next whatever Toy Story 5 or whatever is coming up? Do you see how these tools could affect the production of that? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, a little bit. I mean, we're not really here representing Pixar's work, so the one thing I can say is that there are a lot of people there that are very much aware of what's going on and are looking for ways throughout the pipeline in every aspect to try to find efficiency gains like this. So I think there's already a lot of work going into that to try to find ways to use real-time techniques to get us to better quality images faster.
Next question.
So thought of using VR in your previs at work? Has anybody done it?
I have not heard of anybody using VR at work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's what we're focused on doing right now, at Pixar. Yeah, but I don't know.
2 more questions.
It sounds like you said the animation and the rigging was done kind of beforehand, and then you put that through this pipeline. I'm wondering, what sort of innovations do you maybe expect to see or hope to see in that particular aspect? I know people are, for instance, doing facial tracking, and then they map that onto facial expressions of the subjects. What do you guys think? What sort of innovations are there for us? They probably rely partly on input devices.
Sure. I guess for us, I mean, we're coming from the whole Pixar handcrafted every frame animation thing. We didn't really have the foresight, I guess, to look into motion capture or facial tracking for that sort of thing. But as much as it's a tool for games today, I think that's just as useful for VR films. I think for me, I personally enjoy animating so much that I probably wouldn't go down that route. But
Yeah, it's more about control and being able to tweak the finest details, in your work. And post-caching is not a new thing, It was just a way for us to get exactly what we wanted into Unity.
All right, last question. Let's make it really, really mind-blowingly good. Right here.
I think you guys are gonna do really good things, great movies.
He thinks you're going to do great things and great movies, and I agree. What a good note to go out on. Thank you, Leo. Yeah, big round of applause for Nancy and Lou. They're doing amazing, amazing work. Every time I've watched that little vignette probably 100 times, and I want to live in it. It's so beautiful. Okay, so next speaker is Avram Dodson. I've known Avram for many, many years, good friends back in Texas. Avram is a very talented filmmaker from Columbia University and the director of a upcoming VR short, The Last Mountain, of which there is a demo scene which we will be showing in the other room after the presentations. And with that, I will hand it over to Avram Dodson. Give him a big round of applause.
Hey, everybody. All right, there we go. So today we are going to talk about cinematic conventions in VR.
Do you want to use this or one of the...
Are you guys hearing me all right?
Well, people
all right.
TV land.
Oh, I see. Hey, TV land. There's more than all of these strange faces looking at me right now. That's unnerving. So we're going to talk about cinematic conventions and virtual reality, which is kind of dry. So I've subtitled it, God damn it, Timmy, pay attention. All right, look at that. It's beautiful. Again, gorgeous, giant. Look at that. The composition, hey, the composition, it's amazing. But now we're in VR. There's no more frame. There's no like genius cinematographer to help guide the eye. In fact, now you've got a new person on your crew. You've got a new camera operator. I'd like to introduce you to him. His name is Timmy. He is a 12-year-old spastic. He's got ADHD. He's on a sugar high right now. But we're going to teach him. We're going to get Timmy to be a really good camera operator, using some examples that we're going to go over right now based on The Last Mountain, which is the film we're working on. So let's take a look at The Last Mountain real quick. This is just one scene from the larger film. Oh, where's my sound? Thank you. Oh, poor little guy. Okay, so one of the things people have been talking about, I mean, this is a very nascent field. How does editing work? Does it work like in movies? Short answer, yes. Yes, it does. You can have hard cuts. It works just fine. Cool, so we can use that. Time compression and expansion, just another standard editing technique. Does that work in here? Yes. You saw a little bit of it. We kind of ellipse over little chunks of time. So another answered question. And this is where it starts to get a little bit more tricky, where virtual reality is a little bit different from the film world. If we're watching this and we motivate the user to look off axis and then we cut, we need to make sure that whatever we want the user to see is going to be positioned over here. And then we'll probably want to bring their head back into alignment somehow, just as a comfort issue. So that's a little caveat for editing. You've got to be aware of where they're looking when you're about to cut. Okay, directing the eye within the shot. So we just talked about editing, where you can kind of reset everything if you like. Now we're talking about within a shot, how do we keep Timmy focused? How do we keep him from wandering off somewhere? Moving the camera. But wait, you say, Avram, this is virtual reality. You can't move the camera. Everybody's going to barf, you know. Their heads will explode. Western civilization will come to an end. Well, you know, I mean, people get nauseous going on boats, but we've still got sailors. And there's a real big difference from a giant cruise ship and being on a dinghy in the middle of a hurricane. So There's a smart way and a not so smart way to move your camera. Dollying in and dollying out, moving the camera just like this, in on something or away from it, works very well. There's no real nausea attacks here. That's helpful. And keep in mind, anytime we move the camera, if there's something motivating that move, some kind of on-screen motion, really makes it a much more pleasant experience. So dolly in and out, we're good. Tracking, or for you gamers, that's strafing, works pretty well, not as well as the dollying in and out. You get a little bit more of a nausea tax for this one. Crane shots, your vertical movement, up and down, again, not so bad. Oh, right. Pans and tilts. All right, here's where we start to get in trouble. The forced rotation on the viewer. If you're telling the viewer to look one way and their head's trying to go the other way, that's not so good. So, what can we do to ease this? Well, first of all, you can make it very slow. You want to make these pans, forced pans and tilts, gradual. The other thing we can do is what we call, we're calling it a nudge. We want to just kind of be like, hey, little Timmy, we get you started going in one direction, and the user will finish the look based off of that first nudge. Other techniques. So what we were just looking at, moving the camera, that's like grabbing Timmy, you know, we're jerking him around, slapping him, be like, hey, look over there. Well, these are going to be our more gentle techniques. Motion. Now, if I were to walk over here, I mean, what do? I mean, you're not still looking over there where I used to be, you're looking at me over here now. This is a big one. This is a great way to get people to look where you want. And this is on-screen action, essentially. So, motion. Social. Now, if I were to point out, Renee, if you guys want to look over here, I tell you, I look over here, a crowd of people looks somewhere else, I point. All of these social cues are pretty good at getting people to look in a particular place. We use it in the first shot of our film when Rocky, that's our little rock guy, he looks off into the distance, and what we're hoping is that the viewer will look as well. Dramatic tension. All right, so hold on one second. I'm just going to have a sip of water real quick. Now, dramatic tension is just a basic storytelling device where we get kind of interested about something that's going on the screen. So, dramatic tension, it's a powerful tool. It's more powerful than sound and motion, because I'm over here right now, and I'm making noise. But what are we worried about? We're worried about this, right? It's a perfectly still bottle of water. It's not even very quiet, but it's very interesting. So dramatic tension, great way to keep people focused. Sound. I mean, yeah, sound works. What I would say is interesting. It works maybe even better than you might think. So please do make use of it. Panorama. So up to this point, we've been talking about where do we want Timmy to look? We want him to look at something in particular. Well, what if we don't want him to look at something in particular? We want him to look around. We want him to take in this big, beautiful vista we've created. Think about the opening of No Country for Old Men. It's Tommy Lee Jones talking to you, and it's just all these gorgeous West Texas vistas, and you kind of just take it in. So what do you do there? You just don't give him something in particular to focus on. Make use of it. It's a nice way to slow down your narrative. I guess Timmy's going to be okay. We're going to be okay. There's a lot of stuff we can borrow from cinema, and that's going to help us tell some really good stories. And these are the people involved in this particular story, and I want to give them a shout out. We've got Handsome Mike. We've got Paul Kanyuk. He's here somewhere. He's a good guy. JP, Selena and Renee, Carol, Thomas, Ben, Chris, all these awesome guys. Francis, Manny, Bagon, Andrew, Turner, Douglas, Ryan, George. Those are our people. And so a big shout out to all you guys. And that's all we've got. Thanks so much for listening, guys. I hope you like The Last Mountain.
All right, great job, Avram. We've got time for a couple of quick questions. You, sir.
Thank you. So one of the things in VR is a lot of times you'll have everything in focus, and that feels kind of weird. I'm thinking, what do you think about depth of field or field of view?
Yeah, if we can control depth of field of view, that'd be another great tool. The question is, I mean, how do you do that at this point? You know, there's not really the mechanism for it. But once that becomes an available option, Yeah, go for it. And I would say that, like, for some of these things, if you wanted to blur out the background stuff, it'd be a great way to, another way that I didn't list in here, that's a way to get people to focus on a particular thing is to limit the depth. Throwing the background out of focus is going to bring your focus to the foreground, or whatever's in focus, whether it's foreground or background. So it is a tool. The problem is, if the user tries to look at the other stuff and it's just like rendered as out of focus, it doesn't work so great.
Next question in the back.
Yeah, have you thought about how to restructure your stories in virtual reality?
How do you mean?
Well, right, a traditional story is narrative. You have a single hero. You know, you have a single line in that story. You know, but when you enter a VR space, especially interactive, that story, it seems like it's not. It seems to me it's not appropriate to transport that story structure into this new space.
Well, appropriate. I mean, there's the story that I'm trying to tell, which in this case is very much like a cinematic experience, and we recognize doesn't take advantage of all the programmatic things you can do in virtual reality. But you're absolutely right that that's an exciting new area, and in fact, the people we've got coming up are doing just that. But it's not the only way to tell a story, right? It's like we have these options in VR, but we don't have to use all of those options for every story. But it's a great question.
Next question. We've got time for 2 more questions. Taciturn. Oh, there we go.
What has your experience been with using traditional techniques like hard cuts and crossfading, things like that? In my experience, it's always been very jarring the minute it happens. How do you kind of see yourself kind of getting past that or helping alleviate some of those concerns with like hard cuts and things like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've thought about this a little bit myself because, you know, in regular cinema you can have a dodgy cut too, and that's disorienting. And I was thinking to myself, when we have a cut that's not working, why is it not working? Is it because it's inherent to virtual reality that a hard cut can't work? And I don't think so. I think a lot of how you make a cut work in this world is by giving people a geographic anchor. And in our film, we're using our main character as kind of an anchor because we've got a big open space that doesn't have sort of flagpoles laid out. But if you give people something that orients them immediately in space across the cut, then you should be fine. And I think our film does that pretty well, and some of the other projects that are going on here also do that very well. And you'll see when you watch it that, oh, okay, there's a cut that works.
All right, one more question. I'll let you pick it, Auburn.
I'm just curious, how many actual 12-year-olds with ADHD have you tested these concepts?
Just myself. I'm emotionally, that's who I am. But no, it's an interesting question. One of the, just the other night, we were running this past some people never had put on a riff before, weren't 12 years old, but they had no idea what they were diving into. And didn't know if they could look around or not look around. And once they would look around for, and this is, I want to bring it back to the sound thing real quick. They were looking all over the place, just getting that first moment in virtual reality. And then when our little lizard friend chirps, their head just snapped to it. So, yeah, I mean, some of the techniques are more effective than others, but they do work.
All right, give it up for Auburn Dodson. All right. Next, I'd like to introduce you to Nicholas from Video Stitch. You probably know Video Stitch. They're a great product for stitching together lots of cameras for 360 live action. They're going to give you a quick 5-minute talk about some new software they're unveiling to the world for the first time ever at VR Cinema. So give it up for Nicholas.
I will make a quick introduction about live 3D stitching. So what we do is we do stitching, so we develop software to stitch video together. Here this is our 2D software that basically, here we have 6 GoPro cameras that we stitch together into one full 360 degrees panoramic environment in real time. You can see at the bottom here we have a timeline where we can set a parameter over time such as exposure or stabilization. So we have 2 software right now. We have a post-production software which is called Studio. We released the version 2 a few months ago. And we have another software which is called Panorama VR. It is a live software, live stitching software. We are based in Paris. We are now 13 people, mainly engineers in computer vision. And we are doing one thing, which is developing software for you guys like making games. A question that may arise is, why live stitching for cinematic VR? It's because 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I was doing already 360 videos, and because there was no software to stitch videos, I was like the man here that basically was doing movie production, but it's like 200 years ago when you go in the shoot something, and you have no idea what you are doing. So even though live stitching is maybe mainly for broadcast, I think there is one really use case for live stitching for cinematic VR, which is live preview for director. There is right now three type of cameras 3D. There is pairs, interleave, and planar. So it is 3 examples of cameras. The first one is camera from 360 Heroes, where you have pairs camera. The second one is in interleave. It's a Project Beyond camera from Samsung. And here you have a little bit more depth. The third type of camera is what I call planar. And each one has pros and cons. There is a quick table here where you can have an idea about the pros and the cons. So the idea it changes the depth, so depth, quantity, and quality. With the pairs and interleave, you have the depth is set by the camera, so you cannot in post-production change the depth. With planar camera, you can change that, and this is really a good feature of the planar camera. About the quality, the pairs, if you are at the front of the pair camera, then the depth is good. But if you are between pairs, the depth is not so good. And if you go with interleave of planar camera, the depth is more constant all over the 360. Sorry. Our idea is to be compatible with all the type of camera that are shown here. Here a quick roadmap on the 3D. So the idea of our software and the 3D, we want to integrate a live preview on our software into Oculus. It means right now where people are editing 3D videos, they have basically no really idea of what the result will be, and they need to do a lot of processing. They need to do a lot of processing before having a preview of the images. We want also to highlight disparity, to see where the 3D is, to have the depth, to export depth as well, which will be a very useful feature for post-production, for people doing post-production. We want to be able to adapt the stitching over time and to have masking capability when there are close people from the camera. I will quickly show you a 1-minute demo of the live 3D. It is right now it is not yet integrated into the GUI, so it's a command line process. So here I have a set of videos. There is 12 videos. I will just launch 2 maybe so you can have an idea about what the video are about. So it is a video before stitching. And this is the other one. So here we are in a pair setup. So this is command line stitching, so it means our algorithm people are working on it, but you know it's you will see. Maybe a few questions why it is stitching. It will take maybe 1 minute. If people have questions.
Any questions while it's stitching? Then I'll suggest that you guys think about community announcements you'd like to tell the VR community about. After Nicholas is done, we'll have time for a few 30-second community announcements. So think about what you want to say, and then when Nicholas is done, come up. We've got time for 4. So whoever gets up here first with their announcement.
I have a question. What's your goal? What are you trying to achieve with this? Are you trying to get the software acquired by a company? Are you trying to sell it as a service? What are you trying to do?
Weta is not a service, it's a software that we sell to movie production companies. So we have customers in about 40 countries. And our goal is to provide the software for everybody that is doing VR video. So we start with 2D because it's the first step, and then we are going to 3D. So our goal is to work with movie production company. We want also to work with camera manufacturer, because we know that today a lot of people use PC to do stitching, but in a few years, of course, stitching algorithm will be integrated into the camera. So we work as well with camera manufacturer.
About how much longer do you think it'll take?
It should be finished in 10 seconds, I believe.
10 seconds, okay. So if you want to ask Nicholas any other questions, come see him after the talks.
Okay, so here is it. We have a 6 seconds of video that we have just been stitched on. Because this is a stereo, we have 2 equirectangular, which is called top-bottom setups.
Very impressive. Let's clap. Good job. All right. Thank you so much, Nicholas. Really impressive stuff. So community announcements, who's got them? Run on up. 30-second quick announcements.
I'm Dave Arendash from Mind VR. Several of us are here. We have gear and cardboard demos we'd love to show you. We are currently working on some software that does titling and CGI, so you can overlay that on types of things you've just seen if you want to add effects to that, and many other helpful tools for doing this type of work. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Hello everybody, I'm Chris Miranda, and I am the creator and host of one of the longest running podcasts about virtual reality. I am hosting a panel with 4 venture capitalists on January 26th at Pivotal Labs, and it's Chris Hollenbeck from Granite Ventures. It's going to be Cliff Plummer, an early investor in Oculus, and 2 guys from Rothenberg Ventures, tentatively. On top of that, there's going to be demos, and there's going to be opportunities to change mankind as we know it, typical stuff. And I'm also launching my own meetup group. Sorry, I'm running late. It's called San Francisco Metaverse Scholars Club, where we're going to discuss about the most uncomfortable, the most cutting edge, the most pressing questions about the metaverse and virtual reality. And come join me. The podcast is called Enter VR, and I'll see you guys around.
Thank you, Chris. Any more announcements? Any more community announcements? Tyler, you want to come up and get set up while they do the you're next.
Hey guys, I'm a filmmaker like so many of you. How many people are actually filmmakers, active filmmakers? Oh, cool, great. I have a project and it's called iActor, and we're looking for the rest of our team. I have a feature in post called Jukebox Hero, and I have this iActor new project. It is based on a couple scenes from this project. And the rest of the group would consist of Unity folks and also an audio engineer. So if anybody wants to write down my email, it's VR@Wilderness Road Productions. I'm happy to tell you all about it. And my script is a 2-time Sundance Feature Film Lab finalist, and we also have our line producer with multiple award-winning Sundance projects. So we are a strong team and would love to talk to you about the creatives. And again, the email is VR@wildernessroadproductions.com. Come up, give me your card later, or happy to email you info. And my name is Sherry. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. One last announcement. Anybody have one? Come on up, man.
What's up, Bo?
What's up, Bo? Give it up for Bo.
All right, thanks, guys. Hello, my name is Bo. As you know, I have some VR projects. My most recent one is about curating your artwork and photography in VR. So I'm developing Android and iOS app in which you submit your photos and we see it as an immersive experience. So I hope it would be helpful to artists, to photographers, and of course to our VR community for your exciting upcoming products. So I'll be around, and I'll be happy to give you demos. Thank you.
Thank you, Bo. Okay. Who wants a virtual reality viewer from Dodo Case? Dodo Case gave us 4 of these to give out. I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 10.
7.
6.
3. Who said 3? All right. My first pet was a... human. Who said human? Oh yeah, we've got absolutely. We're going to give one to Theo, the cute kid up front. Okay. Who remembers my wife's name? Selena. Who said Selena? Well, you can give it to someone else. I will. All right. With that, I want to introduce Tyler Hurd. He is the director of VR Butts, one of the most unique, hilarious virtual reality or films, period, that I've ever seen. Really cannot stress how good this film is. I was blown away the first time I saw it. Unexpectedly blown away.
Hey, hello. This is Butts, the VR experience. Welcome. Today, we're going to talk about, just quick intro, I'm going to talk about myself because, I have you all here listening. And then we're going to show the original Butts. It started as a normal short film, was ported into VR. And then we're going to hear from Skillman and Hackett, buddies of mine. They started all this. And then we're going to talk about some creative hurdles we ran into, and then we're going to go over some technical issues, and then we're going to wrap it up for some Q&A, and there will be bullets. So, just about me real quick. I'm Tyler. I started at Double Fine Productions when I was 19. It was the first thing I did right out of school, and I stayed there for 9 years. I worked on some really awesome projects. But eventually, I had to kind of break off on my own and figure out what I was going to do. That would be my voice, my own creative path. Kept trying to find that. And so I moved to New York, and I started freelancing and advertising. And it afforded me time to start making my own projects. And this is what I ended up making. How do I show that? Why is that not playing?
Is it a YouTube clip?
It is.
We can act it out.
Oh, maybe because I'm not connected to the internet.
Oh no.
There we go.
The guest one is. Are you locked together?
It's going now.
Okay.
Patience.
There you go. The play button means it can go.
There's no sound. Well, it's coming from my laptop.
Okay, where's your mic up to it?
That's good enough.
Oh.
come on. Let's see. Okay, so that was a thing that I made. I'm just going to talk real quick about it and then introduce my friends here. But I was going through rough times when I made that, surprisingly enough, if you can believe that. I was trying to figure out my own path, didn't really know what I was doing. I was really kind of unsure, full of self-doubt. And I released it, and it got a really good response. So I felt like I had a little more of a direction. And right around the same time, I got an offer to work at Sony because of that ridiculous thing. So at the same time, my buddies were starting a VR company, and they approached me, and this is them.
Thanks, Tyler. I'm actually really glad that all of us just got to watch that together in this room. My name is Patrick Hackett. This is Drew Skillman. Together, we're Skillman and Hackett. Drew and I worked with Tyler at Double Fine on a number of games. Tyler left. We couldn't bear to be at Double Fine for much longer after that. So we had to quit and start our own thing. In all seriousness, Drew and I left to kind of like pursue like the VR revolution, the reason that we're all here. And over the summer, we were doing a whole bunch of prototypes, trying to figure out exactly what our company was going to do. And right about then, Tyler put that video up on Vimeo, and it's kind of obvious what we had to do. And so, whatever.
Yeah, so we asked Tyler for assets. We were like, this is going to be amazing. And I think we were just looking for like some Maya files or something. And I don't know, a few days later, we got a zip file that was a like complete adapted Unity project of the entire thing, like ported over to Unity. You'd never even used Unity before, I don't think.
No, I just started with it.
Yeah, it was amazing. So anyway, we got way more than we asked for. Yeah, we got this awesome drop. And this is actually amazing because we got to go around showing everyone butts as we were developing it, but Tyler had no headset until basically the end of production.
Right.
And
I didn't see it in VR until like 2 weeks before I finished. So.
Which was ridiculous. But it started that way. It was really weird because we had all this Kinect experience. We'd been doing Kinect games. So the first thing Patrick and I did when we started the company is we duct taped a Kinect 2 and Oculus DK1 setup together so that we could get basically initial head tracking. And that ended up being really, really critical because it let us kind of experience what it's like to move your head and get like a true VR experience. And what we found is that we were playing with butts and all these different scales and making them giant, pooping on you, and tiny, and all these different scenarios. And we found out that the action figure scale, kind of like tabletop, right in front of you, felt really, really, really amazing. And you can kind of look at it from different angles and whatever. You'll see the demo, but that was kind of like the origin of why we ended up at that scale. Mm-hmm. And now, yeah, I think the rest is Tyler talking about how he just basically
I didn't know how cool it was. They sent me some capture videos. I was like, whatever, this is great, I guess. And then we talked about what we could do with it. And originally we had two ideas. We were like, how do we solve for not having a camera? I mean, how do you port that thing into VR? We didn't have, I originally was really attached to keeping the camera. And doing this hologram version where it would just be like a tabletop 3D thing that you could look at. All the subtleties as a filmmaker of like close-ups and everything that I wanted to portray would be still there because it would be, the camera would be there. The other version we thought of was like a more of a stage play where you just watch them act everything out. This I thought was terrible because all of these like subtle moments, all the facial expressions, everything, all these little cues they had between the two characters would totally be lost, be totally gone because it's, you can't really force anyone to look where you want at any given time. But I think the movie mode never happened because it was a lot of tech to get it working, I think. We just never did it because would take a long time to do it. So we went with the stage play version, and people got pretty excited about it. So then I had all these problems to solve, like especially that whole montage sequence. The time is jumping everywhere. There's nothing you can do. I had to basically rip it up and start over. And then there were some other issues like how do you lead the eye up when there's the day to night transition. So we ended up, I had to do a lot of leading the eye, which everyone talked about. There were a couple things I did. The first one was the iris. So the original short had had an iris, and I just adapted that into 3D, so it's like a 3D iris, and it worked really well for dropping someone into space and then taking them out at the end, and I could lead the viewer up to the moon at the very end, which you can see in the demo room. And then the other thing was this montage. I had to basically start over with it. And then there's the day to night transition where the camera looks up and then it fades to night and it looks back down and you see them, and that was like a really powerful moment, so I wanted to capture that. So I came up with this idea of having them, they're kind of like rocketing around doing like a ass-fetty waltz, I called it, which you can see in the VR version, and then they kind of shoot up like rockets up into the air, and then there's a big fireworks explosion that leads you up. So we're using action to lead the eye. And then the particles, all the confetti and stuff falls down, and if you follow it right, then you see them and they're there, and the whole transition works seamlessly. We ran into some technical stuff, which I'm just going to blow through because we're running out of time. One thing that was great was that we already had a short. It already existed, so it's just a matter of porting everything over. Had we started from scratch, probably wouldn't have gotten this far. The other thing was, it was really simple. I had to do it all myself originally, so it was very minimal background, one set, 2 characters. If you're going to plan to make your own thing, I'd say make it simple, because it still works. And then the other thing is, because of our games background, I was able to write a pretty simple pipeline to port stuff from Maya to Unity very fast. And I would stress that a lot. If you can set up any sort of pipeline to help iteration, it'll help you a lot in the long run. The tough stuff we ran into was audio being out of sync, so watch out for that. Transparency sorting is a big issue, and performance is also a huge issue. So if you can simplify things and you have someone with some real-time knowledge, it'll help you out a lot. The other thing was, I didn't have a headset. I didn't have a VR headset at all. So I would recommend having a VR headset when you work on these things, and maybe a computer that's not a few years old might help you out a lot. So in conclusion, I found my path. It all worked out. All that self-doubt was stupid. Now I'm really excited about VR now, and as soon as I saw those little guys in VR in front of me, like acting out the whole scene, like real people in front of me, I was just like, all right, that's what I'm doing. I'm doing that now. So it all worked out, and I'm pumped. And it's here. You can demo it, and it's also online. I just released it today. Go to butsvr.com. If you have a DK2, you can download it and try it out at home, show it to your friends. And I'm interested in porting it to other platforms if there's anyone here that would like me to do that. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, we've got time for a couple of questions. Who wants to go first? Let me see a hand in the air. No questions after that? That was fantastic.
I ask a question. I saw at the initial logo, the Butts logo, the blue character was blocking the letter U. So, I mean, was there like any significance to that? Because I thought, when I first looked at it, I thought it was bits because the letter U was blocked.
Are you talking about in this presentation?
Yes, it's when the demo was starting originally.
Oh, right. I think, well, I know what you mean. I'll just get out of this. I don't know. I have no answer for that. There was some really deep, meaningful significance to the placement of the character over the U. It's a metaphor for modern life.
All right, any other questions for Tyler or Skillman and Hackett? And by the way, Skillman and Hackett are...
Skillman and Hackett, Tilt Brush.
Yeah, Tilt Brush. Yeah. You got to check that out if you haven't. It is truly... It's the first application made for VR that I wanted to spend hours in, which is totally strange.
It's a VR drawing tool. And it's incredible.
This guy made a money symbol. It is money in both senses of the word.
More like an agreement, but yes.
Oh, that shit's money, dude.
Yeah. Money.
What's are you gonna keep working on Butts VR, or what's your next project? What do you think?
Butts VR is done. I've started another animated VR music video, and I'm talking to some other people about maybe working with them and stuff. And I also did a little bit of work on the next project that's going to be presented. So I'd like to keep continuing in VR. It's just there's not as much work right now. So.
Let me ask you one more. Yeah. So how do you monetize on this? Like, are you going to sell this, and how much? How do you know how much to charge?
We talked about that, and we didn't think that there's a lot of people buying stuff right now, and so now at this point it's more of a marketing tool, demoing it to people and getting them pumped, and like everyone in this room about VR. Oh man, VR. Oh, this is the future. So yeah, we can use that for that, and then hopefully money will just, excrete from that situation.
It'll work out, man.
Yeah. Money just comes when that. Yeah.
All right, let's give a big round of applause for Tyler. Next up, we have Jill Barron and Johnny. These guys are from Visionary, a new VR startup. They've got an amazing film to show you guys in the other room. Super talented, industry veterans. You like the bullet time effects in The Matrix? This guy's responsible for it over there. Johnny's done a bunch of amazing music videos for Muse and Belle and Sebastian. These guys are the real deal, so give them your undivided attention. And then, after they finish talking, we get to go watch their movie.
The problem.
All right.
There you go. So we're from Visionary VR, Gil Barron and I, amongst some other founders, and we have a short film in the other room that we produced. Actually, Renee produced it. I want to make sure to give him full credit as the producer. And we're working on trying to. We've been exclusively focused, and Tyler, who is very modest, who did an extraordinary amount of animation work over there, Mr. Tyler B. Butts. Yes, thank you. So we've been exclusively focused on the problem of storytelling in VR. How do you do it? How the heck is it possible? Like a lot of the folks here, I think it's crazy inspiring to see what people are doing, and I think you guys will agree that the short films that are playing in the room back there are the beginning of something, of a whole new way of entertaining and engaging with entertainment.
And what we've seen up here as well, the hats off to all the people who are jumping in before there's even clarity that there's water in the pool. So
yeah, and so what we're going to show you right now is a video. Forgive us if you've already seen it online. It's a video that explains basically our findings and some of our theory and a conceptual crack that we believe we've found for storytelling in VR and the ways that may apply to virtual reality filmmaking in the future. So hopefully you enjoy. The unprecedented freedom of virtual reality presents a fundamental roadblock for the content creator. The ability to look anywhere, at any time, within the unbounded space that makes VR so exciting also makes the reliable and repeatable delivery of information nearly impossible. Before VR, we always had the structure of a frame to help us guide the viewer. The frame creates a boundary between what's in the story and what's not. In VR, there is no frame, forcing content creators to resort to gimmicks and tricks to redirect the attention of the audience. These devices, what's that, are problematic for sustaining viewer engagement behind you for any length of time. Hi, I'm Johnny, a founder at Visionary VR. In the past year, I founded the Proto Awards, the first ever award show for VR, and co-founded the VR LA Meetup. I've spent more than a decade directing projects for artists like Muse and Belle and Sebastian, and clients like Apple and Facebook. The first time that I tried VR, I was blown away by how much more emotional it is than any other medium. Yet, all of my attempts to tell stories in VR were met with frustration, which led to a series of discoveries. Our solution: a purpose-built system for storytelling, which reimagines cinematic conventions for VR, starting with the frame itself, would allow you to deliver a consistent narrative experience that is controlled but not constrained. By placing the most important elements within this boundary, the content creator ensures that every viewer gets the same information every time. This includes all types of information,
from facts and figures to narrative information and everything in between.
A boundary in VR is a dividing mechanism that lives within the space and delineates different regions of interest.
Introducing boundaries into the virtual world as a tool to divide the space and focus viewer attention evolves the fundamental concept of the frame.
Bringing it into VR and allowing the creator to show the viewer without having to tell them where the primary story lives within the larger world. The primary zone is the area which contains the central narrative. As the viewer leaves the primary zone and approaches a boundary in the virtual space, they are presented with sensory cues that inform them that the flow of content is about to change. Zones are aware of the viewer's attention and can therefore react when engaged.
By providing boundary sensory cues to the viewer, we reinstate their natural freedom of choice between the passive, the active, or any combination.
No matter where you are, your boundary options can travel with you across cuts and transitions. You, as the content creator, decide not only the cues, but what's passive, active, or interactive in these primary and secondary zones, what happens in each of these spaces, and how they connect with each other. When you, the viewer, cross from the passive viewing mode, you can engage an active exploratory mode that lets you freely investigate the virtual world around you. Beyond just exploring, your actions in one zone can have an impact on the content of another. For example, a discovery made in an interactive area can inform and influence what will happen when you resume the narrative as a passive viewer. The system.
Visionary Focus is a software system that builds on these concepts, unlocking a whole new way to tell stories and deliver information, all from within virtual reality. Here's a sneak peek of our prototype in progress.
Fly around and set cameras. Karate chop to add and remove cuts. Stretch the timeline to zoom in for precision control. Animate cameras. Control the speed of playback with a wave of your hand. Adjust audio with your hands. Interact and edit in a whole new way. And as a viewer, experiencing content created with the Focus system, you gain an intuitive understanding of what's in the story and what's not. When you cross a boundary, the content pauses automatically, allowing you to explore everything the virtual world has to offer, without losing track of the primary narrative.
If you want to tell a story in virtual reality and know that your audience will experience its full impact, Focus is the answer.
We're crafting a toolkit to let you tell stories from inside the virtual world.
Our Focus system introduces a new set of fundamental conventions that will become part of the language of VR.
This is what we're building at Visionary VR, and we can't wait to share it with you. Visit visionaryvr.com to sign up for updates.
Or just talk to these guys.
So, did any of that make sense? Or are we crazy? That's the question. I think we've been working really, really hard on what you guys just saw, and we know that some of it makes good sense, I guess, on the face of it. It's common sense, it's obvious, and is like, duh. And then other aspects of it are sort of convoluted, and there's more to it. So we're here to do any kind of question and answer. We can talk a bit about any subject that was discussed, anything that you guys are thinking.
I'll let you guys pick the people to talk to, and
There
then
you go.
I'll just watch.
Tyler, you're up first. What do you think of the animation?
Of the animation, it was the best I've ever seen.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm going to ask the same question I asked before. So it seemed to me these were really interesting tools for giving focus, to a narrative within a VR. But have you thought about actually how you restructure the narrative that you're going to tell?
Absolutely. We've been giving it a lot of thought. I mean, how a story is structured should be, in theory, completely malleable. You should be able to, as a storyteller or filmmaker, tell any kind of story you want to tell, in any shape you want to tell it, with any structure, right? So we think that all of it is possible. Everything that has existed as conventional, as supporting the conventional way that we tell stories, one of the biggest things that I think if we made any discoveries and we did get anywhere with it, a big part of it was recognizing that like the nature of storytelling fundamentally doesn't change. Just because there's a new medium, and we're all crazy excited about the interactive possibilities of what you can do in VR now, because we have this new medium. Just because there is a new medium doesn't necessarily mean that the nature of storytelling itself changes.
Well, or that you throw away the foundation of where it's come from. So to your point, you know, one of the things that we've posited and we've spent a lot of mental capital thinking about is, you know, with this new space of VR, it's, if you think about it as sort of additive possibilities on top of narrative. So you could imagine that stories, the linearity of stories could evolve through not only multiple viewings, but, you know, for us, the idea of this system allows you to have spaces or even multiple stories stacked up adjacently where one can inform the other, which allows, it's, you know, the simplest iteration of that becomes a choose your own adventure, but the more adventurous iteration of that becomes layered narratives where you know, really ultimately a narrative is you're choosing what information to give out to the audience at any given point and what are the repercussions of the information, in other words, what comes after that. So if you imagine that this space now allows you the platform to layer on additional pieces of information at multiple sort of input points, that's really what we're setting up, is the proposition that you can take this sort of base linear narrative and you can now bring it into the virtual space and start adding on to it and opening it up, built around the fundamental conceit of a point of view that's driven. That's, for us, there's a bunch of other places that VR will go with storytelling, you know, in the round and a lot of other places.
One of the big epiphanies for us was, okay, if I'm really being honest, I love playing video games. I also love watching movies. I love them equally. I don't necessarily love more than, it's dependent on mood, you know. We like to sit down at the end of a long day and make a choice. We don't think of it as a choice between passive and interactive, but I'll go all the time from watching Netflix to like browsing the internet, doing something passive to doing something interactive, watching Netflix to playing a video game, and then unpause the story and go back. And I think what we tried to do was come up with a core conceptual crack for how the creator, the filmmaker, the storyteller can have that same kind of freedom of choice over how stuff is structured, to what degree it's passive, to what degree it's interactive, in what balance, and have total freedom in that. And then on the viewer side of things, to within the playground that that particular creator or storyteller decided was the balance they wanted to set up of their world, all of these things can coexist, and you have that same freedom of choice that you have when you're sitting on your couch at home and you want to go from Netflix to, you know, the internet or what have you.
All right, we've got time for just one or two more questions.
Gentleman up here, I saw your hand first.
Oh, yeah. Question about the gesture-based editing tools. With film editing, a lot of 3D stuff, a single frame can make a huge difference. How precise is that, and how do you kind of get around?
It's down. It literally is down to the frame. So we've, you know, the one of the things that we've been sort of discovering along the way, which is part of the, you know, exploratory processes in terms of creating this new sort of modality and tool set, is you have to work. You get to work within the limitations and the opportunities of the medium. So our system is quite literally, we can drill down to the frame level. But one of the challenges within that is actually how you scale the interface space and how that relates back to you.
Cool. One last question.
So, question is basically about attention.
Sure.
The concept of zones is very interesting. When I move around and it pauses the scene, I'm exploring stuff and I'm coming back, I'm losing the tension in the scene. So
Well, one of the things that we did that you'd see in our short over there is that we don't talk about, there's a lot of stuff we don't talk about in the video yet, even that we've figured out about how that can work. And that was one of the biggest problems. It's a really great point. Like, what you're asking is, okay, how do you allow someone to pause a story but without falling out of it completely, without disrupting it? And one of the ways that we did that, there's a couple of different things working in concert in the tools, but in the underlying mechanic, but one of the biggest things that made it work for us, that proved it to ourselves, like, oh, okay, this will work, was the idea of a kind of hold music that's affiliated and lives inside of the same tone and emotional space as the world or story that you're trying to tell. So if you look back and it automatically pauses, you're all of a sudden thrown into stasis, a mood, a piece of music that, almost like the way that hold music works on a DVD menu, is affiliate with the film and feels like it's living within the same world. And we found that that actually works really well. So long as it's congruent and it feels within a similar tone, you can sort of land into a headspace that you then have, you maintain the mood over a period of time, and then whenever you want, you come back and it picks up right where you left off.
Is that true of the interactions as well?
Yes. I'm sorry?
Is that true of the interactions as well, like when you're skating stuff?
Yeah, and it's also, you know, we're considering it a sandbox in the sense that you know there may be moments where you want to keep, we've got stage lights on and stage lights off, and there may be moments where you can use those as cues in the same way that some of the other presenters before were using motion and lighting and things like that to really keep you in the space. Also, our system allows for the idea that you could set benchmarkers, so when you come back into a story, you'll come back 15, 20, 30 seconds, wherever the narrative emotional beat was meant to start within that moment, and that's something that the creator will have control over to sort of modify that experience. And it's going to be one of the great things about, as we go into this space, discovering, you know, what works. And I imagine very succinctly that things that work in comedy are going to be fundamentally different from things that work in action and things that work in animation. One of the things we found is that the congruency of the world matters. The sound, the video, your brain holds on to a lot more than you imagine you do when you pause the TV and go to the kitchen, as opposed to looking around in a world and feeling like you're still in that space.
All right, give it up for Gil and Johnny and Visionary VR. And a big round of applause for all the other speakers, and a big round of applause for yourself for making it to the end of an hour while being very quiet and very attentive.
And a big round of applause for Renee and Selena for actually making this happen.
So now we're going to break, and you guys are going to get to go see these movies. That room is going to be this dark, mysterious place where you get to really experience them. So try to keep your voices down. This is the room for chit-chat. This is the room for mingling. This is the room for finding your own team to make your film. I think the gauntlet has been thrown down. VR Cinema number 3 is in March. I want you to come up to me and say, I've got a film that I want to screen at VR Cinema number 3, and we will show it. So please, go make a movie. It's not that hard. All right, thank you guys so much.